again for Small Business Digest. We have a great guest today. He's been on before, and it's always been illuminating. So we welcome him, uh, Keith Hall. We welcome him, and we're so glad he could come and join us. Keith, welcome to the program.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. Always a pleasure to be here.
Well, tell us a little bit about your background because I always find it fascinating, and your organization, and finally a website.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I currently serve as the president and chief executive officer of the National Association for the Self-Employed. Um, our membership basically is the smallest of small businesses, micro business owners. Almost all of our members have less than 5 employees. Over half work from home. So we do represent the smallest of small businesses. Most of those are the brand new ideas that you hear about, the dreams that you hear about. Some of those new small businesses didn't really choose to be self-employed, but they found their company that they work for downsizing or laid off, or even during the pandemic, asked to work from home and then furloughed, if you will. So some of those new small business owners didn't even do it by choice. Me personally, I'm an accountant by trade. I actually started with Pete Marwick, so got a lot of international experience. I also worked for a small bank, which was my kind of introduction to small business and some of the hurdles small businesses have. And that's when I became most interested. Started my own accounting firm back in 1991. One of my big clients in 1991 was the National Association for the Self-Employed, providing support, webinars, training for those small business members. So I've been involved one way or the other with the National Association for the Self-Employed for, gosh, I don't want to say how many years, because then you're going to guess how old I am. But for a long time, and again, small business is my passion. Small business owners, those of you who have owned a small business or are planning on starting a new small business, it is very enlightening. It's very gratifying. It's great to know that you've created your own job. It's nice to know that you've created jobs for others. You listen to the president, Congress, no matter which way you lean, whether you're in the middle, lean left, lean right politically, no matter who you listen to, they all say that the most important factor in our American economy is small business. So I'm very happy with that. Again, I'm very proud to be associated with the National Association for the Self-Employed. We really do three things, if you will, a little bit oversimplified, but do three things to help small businesses be more successful. Number one, which is my favorite, we have one-on-one consultations with small business owners every day. We have about 14 experts, from tax experts to general business types, marketing types. We have an attorney that is an expert, IT people, real estate people. Any question that a new small business owner might have, we have an expert that can help with those questions, and we answer those questions every single day, one-on-one. And nothing we do is rocket science. Nothing we do is proprietary. You can go to Google and ask the same question. But I think people like having someone that knows their name, that knows a little bit about their business, that's a little more personal. And I think that's where we make a big difference. And I think that's the most important thing we do day in and day out. We also have about 50,000 members. We have another 100,000 members that are part of a network group, kind of an online interchange of ideas and hopefully sharing business together, creating customers amongst one another. But we take all those voices and put them together and negotiate discounts. For example, QuickBooks or TurboTax, services from Intuit, ADP, Pitney Bowes, Office Depot, that type of thing. Most small business owners don't have the buying power that some big businesses do. So we put those voices together and negotiate some pretty substantial discounts. And all those discounts go straight back to the member. And the last thing we do, which was certainly not the least important, is we spend a lot of our time advocating for small business issues in Washington, D.C. I've been working, like I say, since 1991 on behalf of small business, and never in my personal history do I remember a time that the voice of small business is more powerful than it is today. Again, the awareness of small business, again, both sides of the aisle. Since the pandemic and technology, people are working from home. It is easier to meet worldwide demand from your home today than it has ever been in the past. And I'm extremely excited about the prospects for small business because of the increase of that voice. But we spend a lot of time, our major agenda items this year are increased access to capital. That's always one of the main things that small business owners have to deal with. So working with the Small Business Administration to expand their loan program, working with a number of organizations to expand their grant program, to provide money to help small businesses get started. We also spend a lot of time talking about taxes. And again, I'm an accountant, tax is kind of my background, but we spend a lot of time talking about tax equity, level playing field, if you will, and trying to simplify the tax code. We're yelling about that as much as anybody will listen to us. We're always talking about access to affordable healthcare, another major issue that small business owners deal with. And a new one for us is we're trying to spend more and more time talking about new options for retirement plan vehicles for the self-employed. Lots of employees have a 401k at work. They get a match from the companies. Small business people don't have someone like that helping them. So asking the government to kind of make it easier to set up a 401k plan if you're a sole proprietor, you're the only worker in your business, making some of those hurdles, a little bit of the cost that's involved in setting up a qualified plan, trying to remove some of those hurdles so that self-employed people can start setting money aside for some of their retirement needs. And again, our annual membership is $120. It's $10 a month. It's about 2 Starbucks cups a month, if you will. We don't have any government money. We don't have any private funding. We subsist solely on member dues. And, we decided a long time ago that we didn't want to have government money. We didn't want to have big company money because then you're kind of compromised on the things that you can say in DC and what's important to small business owners, which are our members. So we're committed to that. And all of this, you can find more information about us. I'd love for you to visit our website. Our main address is www.nase.org. And again, we've had one goal since 1981 when the association was formed, and that's to help those smallest of small businesses be more profitable. That has never changed. That's our goal today, and would love to have you visit and look at the things that we can do for you.
I love your spiel. I think you have one of the best spiels I have. I hope you take it as a compliment.
Well, I hope so, and I hope it comes across as a passion. This isn't something that's just a speech. This is what I do every single day. And when I see a small business owner that has created a job and becomes comfortable and they're taking care of their family, they're making their house payment, they're sending their kids to college, it is just overwhelming, powerful feeling, that control part of being part of small business, being a small business owner, and helping those small business owners. So I hope you can see the passion that's coming out.
Well, it comes through. There's no question. But Keith, I'm going to go back onto one of your things, which happens to be a pet peeve of mine. I'm going to tell you that if I'm a company with 3 employees, so it's myself and 3 employees, and I go to the SBA, I have to. Have you ever filled out one of their forms for one of their loans? I mean, it's ridiculous.
It is totally true, and I
I
agree.
I, I mean, they gave $360 million to Planned Parenthood, but yet when you ask them how many companies that were companies under 5 employees, they can't give you a single number. To me, that's what makes me so unhappy with the SBA.
Well, it's true, and I recognize government has to, get their paper and check the boxes and fill out all that stuff because somebody somewhere is going to come back and second guess them at some time. So I get where they're coming from. Likewise, if you go to a financial institution and try to just get a loan as a small business owner, it's very difficult. One of the things is banks, and the SBA a little bit to a lesser extent, but banks have this profile. They're used to proving things. They want to see your W-2 for the last 3 years. So they say, oh, look, you've got a job for the last 3 years. So if you could show me 6 months of W-2s, then it must be safe. Which to me, in today's environment, particularly with some of the struggles we went through with the pandemic, is just because you have a job and you have a W-2 and you deposited last Friday's paycheck, there's no guarantee that that employment job is going to be available next week either. Yet if you're self-employed and you have, say, 2 Schedule Cs for the last 2 years of your self-employment, the local financial institution and the SBA don't view that as static as a W-2. which to me is completely the opposite. As a small business owner, someone who believes in small business, this is the job I created. I'm not going to fire myself. I'm not going to lay myself off. It feels like it's much more stable.
Mhm.
But again, there are hurdles. Now, the good news is when you're trying to fill out some of those SBA loan papers, or if you go to a regular financial institution, it's easy to look at all that paperwork and you get confused. And do I have to have this financial statement? Well, what does an income statement mean? How do I fill this out? What do I say here? The good news is you don't have to figure that out all by yourself. Now, resources like the NASE, the SBA also recognizes their own, pitfalls here, because they put a lot of money into local support groups through SCORE, through small business development centers. They support about 1,100 small business development centers all across the country. Most are joint ventures with local small universities, and they have counselors on site that will help you fill out all of that paperwork. So if you go to sba.gov and click on their resources, you can find somebody to help you fill out that paperwork. So we're probably always going to be drowned in that paper. They're always going to have to fill out one more sheet of paper. But I would like to see the positive side of that, in that they're putting some money behind some resources to help us with that paperwork too.
Yes, okay. But Keith, we did a survey last month. Admittedly, we only had we sent out 500, got 203 responses. All right.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Well, it is because it's us, small. We've been doing it for years. But we asked a specific question. Um, did you go to a local SBA or SCORE, and were you satisfied with the help you got? And the satisfaction rate was 22%. That tells me there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I just happened, I went in and asked for a loan. First thing they told me is I was too old, but I said, that's okay. Uh, but I went into the local one here in New Jersey. I won't say the one. And I sat down. And the first question that they asked me was, I minority? Well, I'm obviously not black. Uh, uh, and uh, what else? Was I a veteran, etc. And when I said no, 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 they said, "Well, I don't know if we can help you." So I sat there. Um, I know you didn't come onto this program to talk about that, but I do know you have a powerful voice in Washington, and it seems to me people talk a good game, but on the ground they don't talk. They don't do a good game, and that's what well, we're here to talk about trends. But I'd like you to keep that in mind the next time you go to Washington,
Well,
because
I
I can.
will. And again, just to kind of close that out, that is always one of the things that we concentrate on. Because it is really easy, and I can be the cynical old man type, but it's really easy to allow our government officials to talk the political game. When they're on interviews or when they're running for office, they talk about service and about funding. But then when they translate that into maintaining those priorities on a day-to-day basis, it's easy to let that slide. And I think that's why you see the approval rating of our congressional leaders, the approval rating of our local leaders, the approval rating of this paperwork, like in your survey. It disturbs me that regardless of who you look at, administration, congressional leaders, Senate, Congress, all of those approval ratings are way below what I would consider appropriate if it were me providing the services.
Mm.
And that's very disturbing. But again, what I can do about it is two things. Number one, we're going to keep talking about it, and I can promise you that. But number two, we need to all work on providing those extra resources so that even when we do run into some of those bureaucratic issues, that we have the resources to get around that. We can do that together. That's one of the reasons we have this network of small businesses. I mentioned our little network of small businesses that can communicate to one another. We encourage them to get online. And if you've gone through the process, let someone know the places that you were successful, the places you had more discomfort, those type of things. So I think keeping focused, staying intentional on that process, I think is as best we can do. And I hope that we move forward. I feel like, and this is, maybe this is the most uncomfortable thing to say these days, is I feel like we're in this era of discomfort with one another. It seems like half of us are always mad with the other half, regardless of what the issue is. And so when we do surveys, and we find the same thing in our surveys, depending on how you're asking the questions, it's almost like half the people feel obligated to be unhappy with the response because maybe they see you as the other side of the aisle. And when I get to this and I think about small business, I think about, like, for example, our agenda items. When we talk about access to capital, talk about tax equity and simplification, affordable health insurance, retirement plan options, there are no demographics, male, female, people of color, white people, rich people, poor people. There are no demographics that put those issues at odds with one another. Everyone wants those things. Everyone wants access to capital, available health insurance, affordable health insurance. They want the tax code to be easier to understand. We shouldn't spend as much time as we spend today trying to maintain compliance with a tax code that's just overly complicated. So when I think about these issues, and a lot of the small business webinars and seminars, groups that I get to talk to, it's like, before we get to material difference, again, if you're left leaning or right leaning, before we get to material difference, we're on the 15th thing that's most important to us. And we tend to, I feel like we tend to concentrate on number 15 rather than the 1 through 14 things, the most important 14 things that we all have in common. And if we could find that common ground and work on those type of things together, I think things will begin to get better. And again, that may be my pie in the sky, a cynical old man thing, but that's what I'm concentrating on. So we spend all of our time in DC when I'm doing my seminars and webinars and talking to small business owners. I try my best to concentrate on those things that we can accomplish together, the goals that we all share. And let's talk about those things together. And together, let's find a reasonable approach that meets the needs of all of us.
Couldn't agree with you more. Your website, before we go further, your website again for our audience?
www.nase.org.
Well, let's talk about what you originally come to this program for. But I think it's important because I know your group does a very good job of amplifying the needs of small business, which I think, despite everything you do and everybody else, the politicians just don't care. They don't. I believe that they go where the money is, and the money isn't in the small business contributions, in my view. But anyway, looking forward, and this year's over, 2023. What do you think is going to happen in terms of small business? Is it going to ease their problems or expand their problems next year?
Well, excellent question. I believe very strongly, part of this is my instinct, but part of this has been proven, at least in our surveys and in our member data and in the results that we have for our own growth in membership, that as a general rule, the growth of small business, the opportunities for new small business owners are counter-cyclical to the general economy. When the economy is down, when there is a recession, or when we're having a pandemic, for example, the growth in small business expands. More people move towards small business in a recessionary time than they do in a boom time. In a boom time, you're typically listening to media reports of big businesses opening new factories, opening new stores, expanding global markets, and that's creating new jobs, employee type jobs, and so they hire more people. In a recessionary time, the exact opposite happens. Big businesses get worried about their cash flow. They get worried about their share price. They get worried about what they're talking about on Wall Street. So they contract. They pull back on some of their new growth plans, factory closings. You hear all those type of things. So now what happens is you find a lot of people that are at home. They're looking for another job. And in recessionary times, there's typically a downward pressure on the availability of new jobs. but people still have house payments. They still have kids going to college. We still have to buy groceries for our families. So individuals look to find other solutions. Some of those people become self-employed business owners, not because they planned it. They didn't say, "Oh, great! Now I have a 3-month severance package from my old job. I have a chance to start making those rocking chairs that I always wanted to make." A lot of people find themselves out of work, but then they start doing exactly what they were already doing, but on their own. For example, a plumber. A plumber works for a big business, and he works in his neighborhood, and all of a sudden he's laid off, but he recognizes that his neighbors still need their toilets fixed. They still have a leak in the kitchen. They still have a foundation leak. So this guy goes to his next door neighbor, goes within his group, within his PTA group, within his kids' football group, other parents, and now he starts doing work for his friends, and they're paying him. A lot of them don't even know it at that point, but he has just created a new small business. He is his own small business. I've heard those referred to as necessity entrepreneurs. They didn't have a dream. They didn't have this, I've always wanted to be my own boss in my plumbing company. It wasn't their dream. They didn't decide to do that one day. It was decided for them. I'm certainly not an economist. I don't know what's going to happen with the recession, but with interest rates where they are, we've got a midterm election coming up. I think that's going to be a major factor as politicians play the political game, as you mentioned. So there's going to be pressure there. So it's hard for me to see from where I sit that we're not going to have continued downward pressure on economic growth. Whether that's defined as a recession, whether we call it a recession, I think higher interest rates, I think higher product costs, consumer goods are going to be increasing costs. Gasoline appears to be easing a little bit, but that's still going to be expensive. And so I think that is a downward pressure on the economy. For small business, I think that provides more opportunity. And again, whether it's one of those opportunity things, it's because I'm fulfilling a dream. This is my chance to do what I've always wanted to do in making the rocking chairs. Or am I going to be one of those necessity small business owners, and I'm going to find a way to still provide the services I've always provided, but provide them on my own? One of the stories I like best is that story that I just mentioned, where an individual had an uncomfortable change in their career, not of their choice. And you hear so many of these during the pandemic that big businesses, the company they worked for 10 years, all of a sudden didn't have a place for them. And I'm sure the company's heart was broken as well. The HR director, the president, all those people, that's not what they chose. But that's what happened. You find yourself at home. Maybe you did get part of the PPP loan that the company got as a severance package, but now what do you do? And I believe in the creativity, the American spirit, all those sappy things that I believe very strongly in. But that individual, them and their spouse, figured out a way to create their own job. And they realized, you know what? We're putting in exactly the same effort, but we're making more money because we're controlling the product, we're controlling the service, we're controlling the price. We're working from home. We don't have to drive an hour to work and an hour at the end of the day. Our standard of living is better. We're together more. And they wake up one day and say, we should have done this a long time ago. And before you know it, they've hired 2 other plumbers, and they've created jobs for other people's families as well. And those are the stories I love to hear. And again, more sappy. But when I think about being involved with small business, those are the small business owners I strive to help every single day, because to me, that's the backbone of the American economy.
Well, I saw a recent survey that seemed to indicate that a lot of people who lost jobs started their own business, uh, specifically as you said it. But I have a lot of questions. Unfortunately, it's a short of time. But one I want to ask: the fintech companies talk about how they've cut through the paperwork for small business. Have you found that fintechs have made it easier for smaller companies to get funding in your surveys?
It is easier. I think we go back to that one statistic that you pointed to earlier, and were you satisfied with the help you got? And I think your number was 22% as it related to the counselors and the help there. I think you might get a similar number if you did a survey on are you happy with your online funding request, with your crowdfunding request, or however you want to call it. I think you may still get a pretty small positive view, positive response to that question, simply because so many people don't get funding. And it's kind of an upside down standpoint. But I think in the last 3 years, the advent of this technology, the advent of new small business owners, I think being able to get a small loan, a small funding from one of these groups is greater than it's ever been before, tenfold, if you will. So I think I like the way that it's headed. I like the communication. I like the spreading of the risk, because other people who were part of that small business growth, they're putting some of their resources back into this type of program because they know this type of program helped them. And so I think that awareness has been huge. I think the trend that was part of technology, now certainly technology has been, expanding dramatically over the last 20 years, but I think that the pandemic itself caused a fundamental shift in, quote, working from home. I think even big businesses have come to the realization that they have to be flexible with their staff, with the employment group. They have to give them the ability to work from home sometimes, whether it's going to be, new versions of COVID, or it's going to be something else. But people have made a conscious decision to move back to their home. And technology, and not only new technology, but new uses of old technology, have put people in a position that they're more flexible. And so I think that has been a fundamental shift away from the normal corporate, you got to go into the office every day, and that you can work from home. That fundamental shift is an extra shift towards small business ownership, because now people are working from home, and they can become much more aware of, I can build my own process here. I don't need to go through the rules of the corporation. I'm providing services. My customers are happy. Everything is working exactly the way that it should be. And I think that's one, 10 years from now, I think we'll look back on the pandemic, on what we went through over the last, 2 years, 18 months, whatever. I think this is one of the things we'll remember from the pandemic. And that is, it caused a fundamental shift away from corporate location America into you can work from anywhere. And I think that's a big reason for the growth in self-employment. And I think we're going to continue to see that grow.
Keith, we only have a minute left. What would you like to leave our audience with, and close with your website again?
Okay. Well, again, we talked about a lot of things. We talked about, help with forms and paperwork and government. We've talked about the voice of small business. If you could only remember one thing from today, if you're a small business owner, you're thinking about starting a small business owner, it's very easy to feel scared, to think about like you're out there all alone. It's Saturday night, you've got the kids off to bed, you're trying to figure out how to make payroll, you're trying to figure out what you're going to do next. If you have an internet connection, you have resources, not just the NASE. There's other organizations as well, but there are people who wake up every day that just want to help you be more successful. So our website is nase.org. So www.nase.org. And we have one goal, and that's to help small business owners, all of you, be more successful.